then do we have an economy? We don't have by default. So I believe the president is going around to my place. He was saying we are having a cancer center. Cancer center, President Uhuru launched it. 2019, he said they have secured money from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, which man again is he talking about? Okay, he's promising across the country, he's promising heaven on earth. Where is the money? We don't have the finance bill 2024, 2023, we don't have. Where is the money? I can talk and not finish. So maybe I give the next speaker for the meantime.
Thanks. We are making opening submissions. Of course, we're going to deepen the discussion as we continue. I see I'd queued in.
Can I continue?
No, let's give others a chance. I'll cue you in back again later, Chris. Were you done?
Yeah, I'm done for now.
Let's have the opening submissions first, and then we get a chance. We're gonna bring you back again. So I see I'd queued in Joshua, but I see Chanya on and logging in from South Korea. So I think the time there might be too late. Chanya, take a go, and then you go to Joshua, then Hannah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Maj. I was actually just watching Jim Wanjigi's interview, and what I got from that is that we have a lot of political stuff to deal with, especially because we do not know who or what we're dealing with in terms of, like, he borrowed money from the IMF, and then we see the Americans also coming in. It's like the cabal is bigger than we thought, and it's deeper and darker than we thought. So in terms of when it comes to the monies, I think we will need a proper audit. But like, I feel like what really caught me was the fact that we're dealing with something bigger. It's not just simply IMF and the Eurobond stuff. There are people who are invested in what we have here in Kenya, especially when it comes to minerals. Like, the mineral stuff is just coming out right now, and it's like shocking everyone because, like, who knew we had all this in our country? So I feel like the more and more Jim Wanjigi talks, the more he exposes what we have in the country. And so it's just, it makes you feel like, as a Kenyan, you've been living in a utopia, The frame was small before, and now it's getting wider and wider, and we're getting.
Hi, Maj. Is Chanya talking really, or am I the one
She
who's
is
not?
speaking. Probably you can just not hear her. Please do log out and come back again. Chanya, kindly proceed. By the way, Chanya, what time is it there?
It's pretty late, actually. It's like 2 a.m.
That's why I thought let me cue in, because South Korea, China, but kindly proceed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was just talking about all these clubs that Ruto has put us in and how it seems quite dangerous. But all in all, I think what Jim Wanjigi was talking about, like, we need a leader who's going to give us hope. I need a leader who's going to give us kind of like a dream, or like who's going to put us together and give us like our destiny as a country. He's going to create a path for us. And also, most importantly, I think what we need as a country is accountability, and this requires a lot of unearthing of a lot of demons. And I think the demons started even way before the emancipation, like during the colonization. And so I feel like it's going to be a long unearthing of like so many things that we have to deal with as a culture and also as a people. So yeah, in regards to like the debt and like the debt burden and all that, I think he made it clear that we can declare odious debt, because this debt didn't really come into the country and we didn't see it really do anything for us as Kenyans. And so I feel like with that, once we push for them to declare this debt odious, and together we have this one push for the government to declare this odious, I think with that, then that's how we can deal with that. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Chanya. I was sharing the link in a group. That's why there was some interruption there. I hadn't, when I was preparing for this space, I was just still settling people. Nonini, welcome on board. Wongdizo, please wait. Let's go to Joshua and then Hannah Ali. Joshua? Okay, Hannah? Hannah, can you hear me? Okay, then let's go to Byro and then Wongdizo. Okay, those not speaking on the mic will have
Can we please strategize, make serious plans, because we are on our own. We have some of the best talents here with us.
Okie dokie, I had to mute as got Byron, because I'm not so sure if he wants to speak or wants to interrupt. I'll give you one more chance. If it's an interruption, we're going to remove you.
Can we please?
Okay, Wongdizo, kindly continue. Seems like somebody's trying to interfere with the space. I've removed him. Over to you. If you don't speak, we're going to put on another person. John, take a go. John Ochola.
Hello, Maji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, I can hear you now. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the chance that you have given me to also to contribute on what is going on with what Jimmy Wanjigi said the other day. He has been talking loud, and yes, I told my friend that Jimmy Wanjigi was once a very close friend of Uhuru Ruto. So whatever Jimmy Wanjigi is telling us is true. I don't think if Jimmy Wanjigi can come out and tell us things that are lies, I don't know. It cannot be. I believe him at up to 90% what Jimmy Wanjigi is saying. It is too much. If you look at what has been happening in our country, we are told, the other day we asked, can you tell us how much is our debt in this country? And then you had the president, our president said, William Ruto said that he's going to form a task force to look into our debt. But the other side, on the other hand, he has been telling us that he has been paying debt. So my question was, how can the president come out and tell us that he has been paying debt every month, or in that matter, every year? Like, I don't know, it was a lot of money. I don't have the correct figure, so I cannot speculate. But and then I asked, how can you say you don't know how much is our debt, but yet you come out to tell us that you have been paying interest of that loan that we have been having? Now, let's look into what Jimmy Wanjigi is saying. That the money was borrowed, but at a point, the money did not come to our economy. Or the money was borrowed, and we have not seen the impact of what the money has done in our country. As a country, we can do the honorable thing the way Jimmy Wanjigi is saying, that we need to look into, we need to ask, if, let's take an example that President Uhuru Kenyatta borrowed a certain amount of money. Can we hold these people accountable and ask the right questions? How much did you borrow, and what did that money did in our country? We need to see it. If we cannot see it or feel the money that was borrowed, then how can we pay something that we are not part of? Marge, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. How can we pay something that was borrowed and did not even reach in our country? Can we start asking these questions? Because if you have to pay, then we need to be told that we borrowed this, we borrowed 1 trillion, and we did this project and that project and this one. But if we are not seeing what the money did, then how can we pay something which is in people's pockets? For real, that money, if the money was given, for example, with China or World Bank or IMF, then it means that money is somewhere. Where is this money? We have an intelligence service in this country that knows everything where the money is. And when the right time comes, I propose that we must get our money back. The money that has been stolen, people have been looting, even, and these are facts. I don't want to speculate because this platform, told me earlier that we have to prove. But I can tell you much that the money came in the country. At a point, there was last year, there's something that came out that Eurobond, there's a certain amount of Eurobond that did not arrive in our country, did not hit our banks. So how are we going to pay? Now the president is saying that we need to pay more taxes so that we can pay the debt. How can we pay something that did not arrive in this country? We, the citizen of the country, did not participate in that borrowing. So they need to tell us what is it that they did with our money. Or else, because I want to say this, in future, let's say in 2027, when we have a new president in place, the first thing we want the president to do is to recover things that these people have been looting. Because the NIS knows where the money has been going. There is no way that Kenyans are suffering, yet few people are in this country. They are ready to loot everything. They borrow. And even our banks in this country have been colluding with these people, because that's one of the points Jimmy Wanjigi told us. So when the right time comes, we are going even to hold these banks responsible. That how are you borrowing to the government with a high interest rate? So which means we basically paying these banks. That's the reason why even when he said that a certain CEO of a certain bank is earning over 200 million in a year, it is true, at the expense of Kenyans. So we need to do something. We need to do something when it comes to management of our resources in our country. Thank you so much, Maj.
Thank you, Wangiso.
Thank you, Wangiso. JM Ikonya, kindly mute.
And Wangiso, please.
And Wangiso, please also mute your mic.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I'm listening and I'm not really chiming in with my opinion. I will do that at the very end. It's interesting to just listen to what people are saying first. Jelani, take a go.
I thought I was next, Maj.
Jelani texted me that she's working and she's you
Okay.
know, at the
all right.
maybe go after her, honey. Hannah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Maj. So sorry, Hannah. I'm so sorry, Hannah.
No worries, sweetheart.
Thank you so much for this space, Maj and Diaspora Hub. So here are my opening remarks. We need to have a conversation, about exactly the amount that has been stolen. What is the amount that is actually classified as odious? For it to be classified as odious, number one, we have to be able to prove, and I did a thread on my timeline last night. We have to be able to prove that this money was taken without our consent. It was not used for our benefit. We have to prove the illegitimacy of the amounts that were taken. And we have to also show, as a democracy and as a sovereign nation, how if these debts were now not being paid, like some sort of, it's like, I would say like some sort of prosperity mechanism, because at the end of the day, once you declare your debt odious, you end up, what's the word? You end up alienating yourself from investors who might be able to give you money, foreign aid, from donors. And for me, I thought that the solution for that was for Kenya to be able to build self-sufficiency. So that's another conversation we should have. If we classify our debt as odious, there are going to be consequences. So how do we build self-sufficiency as a country so that we are not reliant on foreign aid, we are not reliant on borrowing abroad, we are not reliant on, oh, IMF has said they're not going to give us 5 billion. The reason the ruling class is so afraid of the taps being closed, the foreign aid taps and the foreign debt taps being closed, is because this money largely comes to enrich the political class. I can tell you, when I think it was Malawi in 2020, a couple weeks after they got a new president. It must have been 2020 or 2021. I don't remember. It must have been 2020. A couple weeks after they got a new president, they were already shopping for $2 billion in debt. And they were shopping for that money in Nairobi. I do remember at that point they were trying to reach out to local banks and local finance people to try and help them raise this money. There's literally a couple weeks. I don't even think it had been 2 or 3 months since the new president had been sworn in. They were already looking for $2 billion. And Malawi is an extremely poor country. So the people that lend this money, the creditors, the banks, organizations like IMF, World Bank, they do have a level of collusion with the regime, the president, the CBK, the local banks, to keep handing these bad loans, because they know, Kenya for a long time was classified as a country that would never revolt against the regime. So they know once they give you, 10 trillion, we're just going to pay it. We've been paying, debts that have nothing to do with us, debts that Moi incurred, debts that we really had no business paying. And I think right now is when, as a country, we are supposed to put a stop to it and say, listen, enough is enough. We're not going to pay money that ended up in people's pockets. And most importantly, once this debt is classified as odious, because we know we have Panama Papers and a few other exposés, we have all the dossiers, we know where the money went. We know so and so has an account in these places. Can we have some sort of roadmap to bring back this money? How can we repatriate these funds into our country? So I guess these are the conversations that I would like to have. I really liked the expose yesterday because it broke down all these aspects. I did not like that it did not appear as though Yvonne had done her reading very well, and she asked questions that she could have frankly she should have had answers to, like the question about the collusion. So I feel like there's also a role that mainstream media needs to play, where people need to do their research before they call others for an interview. They need to be the ones that even this odious debt by now, because Wanjigi has been speaking about it for two years, we shouldn't be relying on Wanjigi's information. The media should have by now broken this down to us. They should be the ones leading the conversation on what went wrong with this money and where it ended up. So that's my opening remarks. I will stay on listening, and maybe a little bit later when I settle down at work, I might come back. But those are my opening remarks. Asante Sana Maj and Diaspora.
Thanks, Jelani. Just a quick two questions to you before Hannah comes on board, because you talk about the consequences that we might face as a country if we fail to pay back the debt that were actually also not in line with our constitution. Would you kindly explain, because that is the point where even the journalist, and I think that is the point where she also failed, she assumed also that there are going to be consequences, and she did not really explain how these consequences would be and under which law they would be pegged on, because she pointed out that there's no international organization that deals with it. So it was quite shocking, because I thought, is she saying that because it's not regulated, then we should not address it? And then don't you think these international organizations also have an obligation to abide to our laws? I mean, I know it's a complex question to ask you at this point, but just chime in to a level where you feel you can chime in. There are other speakers also coming on board. Just back to you, Jelani.
My understanding of it is that if a nation decides to classify its debt as odious, it's more constitution driven, parliament driven. So what is happening is we are going to our courts and we are saying this is an illegal debt. What that does is that it puts the creditors at very high risk, because we are basically saying to them, you gave us this money, we don't know who you were giving it to, you didn't give it to us, we're not paying it back. So the likely effect from that is that those creditors will not give us more money. That's why it's a self-sanction. That's why I called it a self-sanction. It's a self-trade sanction. And other journals have referred to it as a loan embargo. You're sanctioning yourself. You're saying, us guys are bad. We are bad people to lend money. Don't lend us money. That's what you're saying. Basically, classifying debt is saying, msitupe pesa. Like when you take money, maybe the easiest way is when you take money on Mshwari, or I don't know if they have that system now, but we take money on Mshwari and then you don't pay it back. Safaricom then say to you, oh, we are not going to lend you, because you remember we gave you 5 Gs and you didn't return. So that's what that is. And the consequence would be that the creditors will no longer be confident to give you money because they're afraid that they'll give you money and then the next regime will also classify it as odious. So it forces them, it removes the incentive for them to just keep handing you money when you don't have, when you're likely to not pay it back. So it's a removal of incentive. But it usually doesn't last long, because at the end of the day, people like IMF, World Bank, they still want to be aligned with Kenya. Kenya is an amazing democracy. So yeah, a few people might say we are not going to lend to Kenya money, but I am 1,000% sure at some point, a year, maybe a year and a half down the line, they're still going to go back to giving us foreign aid, right? So I don't think that the consequences, being unable to access debt in the short term would outweigh the consequence of having to pay debt right now that we don't owe. So that's my understanding of it. If there's other economists and people who are in finance, they could probably chip in, but that's how I got it. Those are the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jelani, for the clarification. We head to Hannah. Hannah, as you begin, could you kindly just add on one question? The obligation of the external creditors to also abide by the law, because I would find it very strange in other countries when people just lend money and then by the end of the day do not want to take responsibility for having gone, like, broken the law. Of course, they can accuse us of not explaining to them the law, but aren't they also supposed to do some due diligence? Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you very much. You are very funny. You asked me a question of where I was heading. I'm just gonna do an opening remark. I'm not gonna go into depth with it, but to begin with, let's remember that the globalist agenda still stands. And what would they do? They do not care whether it's Africa might be the bottom of the barrel, but everywhere they are lending, they have their own. They have their own agenda, and they have people that are more close to them that who would see the globalist agenda being pushed. Now in Africa, if I look at it, most of the African leaders are saying that we don't have a choice. We have to take this money, we have to take these loans, and in unfavorable conditions put to Africa. But then you ask yourself, these leaders, are they there to actually, are they doing more heavy lifting than the West leaders? And when it comes into pushing the globalist agenda, which I would say, yes, they tick that box. And then you have the second tier of this issue is, are we just realizing that about this globalist agenda? No, we are not. But then what Kenyans and Africans are realizing is the leaders have decided we cannot fight this big bull who's the globalist agenda. And if we don't dance to their tunes, we're not going to be able to sit on our thrones. And at the same time, why can I not pocket a little bit for myself? Why don't I, this thing is already going to be stolen one way or the other. So you have leaders at different levels. Some would just take a little bit, some will take a lot, some will go to the extent of what we are seeing now in Kenya, and in the terms of what Jimmy is saying. Are these lenders blinded to that? No, they're not. But then they would look at Kenya as in, Kenya is good to pay our loans. Kenya has been a fantastic partner. They've been working with us. They've been pushing the globalist agenda. But here's the caveat. I will look away if there is a leader who wants to cheat his own people. So I am cheating. I'm getting whatever I'm getting. But if the actual leader there wants to take more for himself, it's up to them and their laws to deal with it. So this mambo ya kuiba is on two tails, but with the lenders and the globalist agenda, they would look away and say, if you decide what we are giving you, and yes, we are robbing you blindly, But the letter that we're giving to you, if you decide to tighten up your laws and use it as it's meant to be, good for you. But if somebody comes in who's your leader and decides to steal the letter that we've given you, it's up to you to utilize your own laws, because we don't make your laws, but we make our own laws to push our agenda. So you're left to fetch for yourself. So what Wanjigi has done now is actually taken the sort of the cat out of the bag and showed Kenya, look, the only problem is not the World Bank and MFI and the globalist agendas, but it is also our leaders, and this is how they're stealing. On top of what it's already on top of what is already being stolen. But the letter that we're given on God knows what side, what kind of conditions, but that letter as well, this is how they've used it. Now Kenya I don't think the Kenyans and Kenya is going to go away from this. I think the idea we used to think is just small people, that a group of people were just doing corruption. What Wanjigi has done is topped that scale of corruption and said it's beyond what you guys think. The money that we're paying back, that we've not even used it completely, has not been utilized anyhow in Kenya. So I think he's opened another Pandora box, and I would love to see how far this would unfold. I'll leave it at that, Aj, for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that we're having more people requesting for, the mic. Let's go by John, then Salah, then Ja Ponji, in that order. John Ochola? Okay, I'll text him. I think he's not able to hear me. Salah, and then Okonkwo, actually, you before Salah. Okonkwo, go, then Salah, then Ja.
Hi, I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear, please proceed.
So it's evening in Kenya, so good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing fine. Just for an opening remark, I'm going to try and be extremely brief. Now, I think when it comes to what Jimmy has been talking about, we are all focusing on odious debt and the debt that the government has incurred that we can try and classify as odious. But I'd want us to think currently. There's a lot of debt that we are incurring that can also be classified as odious. When it comes to odious debt, it is not something that we just wake up and say, oh, okay, we feel like odious today, so why don't we? There's laws that govern there's laws that govern what makes a debt odious, and it is based on law. But when it comes to that, I'd actually come to say that currently, I would say that Parliament had granted the government the leeway to borrow up to 10 trillion. And right now, our debt is 11.1 trillion. Basic math says that the 1.1 trillion that is on top of the 10 trillion that we have already incurred as debt can be declared as odious, because odious, basically, another word for odious debt is illegitimate debt. Odious debt is illegitimate debt. So if these guys go ahead and borrow money above what the parliament that represents the people, or used to represent the people, has allowed them to borrow, that money that they have borrowed on top of that is illegitimate. So the $1.1 trillion that they have already incurred, we can call that illegitimate or odious debt. That is debt that has been borrowed by the government that has not benefited the people at all. On top of that, the money that they are currently borrowing is not money that is allowed to be borrowed by law. So that is also illegitimate. So if they say that we have angushed the finance bill and they need to go and borrow money, first of all, they need to go back to Parliament. Parliament needs to ratify the amount on top of the 10 trillion that they can be allowed to borrow. And when they borrow that money on top of the 10 trillion, that is now what we can consider as legitimate debt. But if they go on borrowing without the approval of Parliament, that becomes illegitimate. So on top of that, just a simple other remark that I would like to say is Jimmy has been in government all through, and he has been involved in many of these major deals and major scandals that have occurred, starting from the SGR one. He is rumored to be the broker of the SGR deal. So when Jimmy talks, let us listen, because I think that he has a perspective on this issue that most of us do not know. We don't know the power broking that goes around behind closed doors, but this is somebody that has been involved in all that. So let us listen to him. And finally, let me just say this. I know it might be a bit out of topic, but let me say this. For those of us who are in the country and have been fighting all of this thing, there's this issue that has been coming up. Oh, this one has been involved in government, we don't want his help at all. Let me tell you guys something. Whether these people are clean or not, whether they are involved or not, as long as they are speaking the language that we are speaking, that this president must go, we should accept the help that we are getting. So we cannot throw somebody out. We cannot throw Jimmy out in particular. I see there's been a lot of rhetoric about Jimmy. I feel that it is so unfair for us to throw him out because he has been there previously. But the fact that he is speaking the language that we are speaking now, Ruto must go. I feel that we should let him be a part of us, but we should also try and manage what he does. So the fact that he's been in the system and he's been through this death thing, he's been one of the power brokers. I think one of today's paper called him one of the most feared oligarchs in the country. What he's speaking should be taken seriously. But when it comes to debt, this issue of odious debt, it's not as easy as we think it is, but also at the same time, we are in a very, very strategic country. Kenya is a very, very strategic country, and I would also like to support what Jelani has said. We are a very strategic country. They might throw us out in the cold, but they cannot do it forever. Thank you much.
Thank you so much. I'm a little bit, well, I understand and I agree with you that we need to listen to people, but we should not also underestimate the power that they have on these things, because that is how, we had the maandamano, but at the same time we had different arrangements. So it's like a two-edged sword, so to say. So that I just wanted to put out there, because for me to know a few things, of course I know them, but I also know the buttons to push, and that is the things he was talking about, the gun and the money. I'm very glad that nobody has ever gotten on TV to tell people how the reign is, and that is somehow just like Game of Thrones. That was really put clearly out there. But that now, let's also think about, yes, we unfortunately governed by the guns and the money. But then, is he, how can I say? Let's not forget the role he could play once, a position comes out, once. Let's have such people speaking, but let's also be careful about, the way forward. Yes.
Marge, Marge, a 30 seconds comment. I remember the late Mzee Kibaki who said, kwani ameamuka akakuwa mwerevu. Did this person just woke up and became smarter than he was? That comment resonates with me from the comment that your last speaker just gave. Thank you.
Welcome. John, take a go. We called you on, but you were not. Yeah. Yes, go on.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me now? Yes. Thank you. So, mine will be brief also. So, a few years ago, let me just give you a background story. A few years ago, I picked a book, just The Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. Great book. Kenya is mentioned, but not once did I ever think my country will be IMF and
John, we cannot hear you. But John,
once you take economics is
John, you're having difficulties here getting. Yeah. John, can you hear me? Okay. John, take a go, and then I text James. John, hello? John, try again. We could not hear you, but try again, because I see you've been dropping. Yeah, go on. Okay.
I can't hear
yes,
John.
please
Can I
go
go?
3 minutes.
Okay. Thanks, Marge, and everyone in the space. My name is Jeff Wanji. and I've been in a lot of spaces. And what I'm bringing in today is the course of action. Wanjigi came on television, and it's not the first time. Wanjigi has been on Spice FM. For those of you who've been watching his interviews, and there are a few things that I would like to say. No one seems to care about the process of getting a loan, especially the external loans, because we all know that the loans that we have as a country, almost 70% are internal and 30% are external debts. That's where the IMF and the rest come in. So why do we have to take loan? We take loan to fill up the deficit that we have in the budget, and we take loan for development purposes, not to cater for the recurrent expenditure. Having said that, what are the laws in the constitution regarding external loan? Like for IMF to grant Kenya a loan, what does it take, and who is responsible for signing all those documents? That's where we need to start following the money. Otherwise, we'll be going in circles and start start asking ourselves if Jimmy Wanjigi expose is correct or wrong. Most of us have gone through, have taken a step further and double check and verified most of the things we were saying as true, because the data is available on the website of government. So let me continue by saying that apart from this odious debt, as the other speaker had said, we have to blame the Parliament of Kenya 100%, and that's why there's a new hashtag ongoing that we have to dissolve the government. They are responsible for approving unconstitutional debts. As we speak, we are working with the Uhuru Finance Bill. The last finance bill was rejected as this one. Most of these finance bills are getting rejected because lack of participation of the public. There's lack of public participation. And these things are very serious. They are taken to constitutional courts, and they're won. And that's what Jimmy Wanjigi said as the next action plan. If we package all this, and someone has to take blame. Someone is responsible for this, because there is no way the parliament can go against the constitution of Kenya, approved all these loans against the constitution. Having said that, what Jimmy also says resonates well with the former PS Njuguna Ndogo, the former PS for finance. What he said was that we have a lot. Okay, we've been talking about the loan exposure from Jimmy Wanjigi. That is the dubious debts of the loans. But let's also talk about the revenue that we're getting from the tax. The former PS had an expose which seems like no one cares about. He said that most of the revenue that we are getting from tax are not being used correctly. Like, we have a lot of ghost schools and ghost teachers who are workers who are getting paid a lot of billions, millions, if not billions of dollars, and they couldn't even bring in a working government. It should be a witness in a court, but I don't understand how this works, because even Jimmy Wanjigi should be a witness, like in a court. It should be able to be put into. I'm not saying like it's wrong. It should be put into account. I think that's my submission for now. I'll be listening to others, and thank you so much for
Thanks,
your time.
Ja. And I
Thanks.
would like to just remind that we're now doing 3 minutes each, so that at least more people can also get a chance to speak. Thanks for highlighting that you've counter-checked the facts, and the question is really, if they got away with the previous, finance bills, and is there anything that's really going to change, and how are we going to change this? John, I'm going to add you again. I hope you're going to be able to speak. And about dissolving the parliament, these are their power instruments. They're the one to come in and say UDA has these, numbers. ODM has these numbers. We use them. So those are actually the weapons there. So, but let's keep the conversation going and see how we are going to do that. How, if they could allow us to, because not allow us, but if they're going to allow it, because actually when the Ruto must go thing was going on, I jokingly said, what about if Ruto just decides to sacrifice the MPs and make even the recalling MPs more easier, but he seemed to have chosen another way of working with Raila and that. So I'm looking forward to hearing how this is going to play out. Salah, go as I bring John up.
Okay, thank you, Marge. Thank you, everybody who's in space. Good evening, all. And basically, what I wanted to say is what we need is a responsible government. There are institutions that are supposed to deal with these borrowings. And why are we borrowing? Why is the country borrowing? And how to deal with it, and for what purposes? There are those institutions which are supposed to be responsible for the kind of borrowing going through the parliament. There is the Auditor General. The other government institutions which are supposed. We don't have to rely on Wanjigi and those people who are dealing with the government to get, some exposure from the government. What we are lacking is a responsible government, and we understand that, and that's why there was this problem of Ruto must go, and which may not even is still on there. The only issue maybe I can bring it on board is that now that Raila Odinga and ODM have joined the government, what we are looking for is how are they going to reform this government to do the work of government? What are they going to change with the Ruto government so that things are done accordingly, according to the constitution? Things are done by the institutions which are responsible for it. How can we have a responsible parliament that can, the government can come through and ask the real questions for what purpose they want to borrow for, and that purposes is adhered to, and that the money is put in where it was asked for. In a situation like this, when we are having like this, and then the government tries to, usurp all the powers of all the institutions of this country, or put people in place whom it can use the way they want it, then we will end up having this odious debts and whatever, and this borrowing and those kind of things. And probably some Western powers or other foreign countries, they really want us to be in this kind of a situation so that they can control us. What we ask and what we need is a responsible government, and I don't know. We need the new addition can do to change some things. And I think we have short time, and we will see. And thank you all. I can see Marge is raising her hand.
Thank you so much, Salah. I was trying to stick to the 3 minutes. John, let's take a go. Hopefully now you're going to be able to speak. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marge, for the patience and the entire team. So yes, as I was mentioning earlier, the barbarians are at the gates. Actually, I think they've torn down the gates. They're inside. And yes, as I was saying, by John Parking's Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and yeah, from the last speaker, from Jelani also, I've had so there is Jimmy Wanjigi is part of the system in this particular way. This is how important this figure is. To bring someone to power in Kenya, Kenya is an important geopolitical country, the Western nation, because of course, access to the sea, political stability, there is that. Of course, from the book, we've had CIA operations in Kenya, so on and so forth. So yeah, from the last speaker, let me just reiterate this. Why don't we have institutions that carry out the mandate of the Constitution? Why do we need private citizens in the likes of Jimmy Wanjigi coming out, who are actually part of the establishment? They're only coming out because the establishment is somehow done with such individuals. So they're coming back and taking a hit at them. It's okay, fine. Mgala muwe, haki yake mpe. In Kenya, we have extractive economic institutions. So by this, what I mean is that our economic institutions are built to serve the elites and the oligarchs, as they're called, I think, in the Soviets or Russia. So these institutions are only there to allow growth at a particular percentage or a particular level, such that the few who are in control of the system, as I said, economics is sovereignty. Whoever controls the economy, as is it Jim Cavil, the former political advisor to Bill, what do you call this guy? Bill Clinton said, it's about the economy, stupid. Politics, everything always goes back to the economy. So it's like the multinationals and the IMF. Can they stay back without with the odious debt? I doubt. If my interest is in taking possession of the wristband that you have, I will do every single thing to have it. Controlling Kenya is you're controlling a very powerful country in the in the eastern part of Africa, and in essence, you have access to Asia and the Middle East to a greater extent. So I don't think these guys will back off. It is the citizenry has to rise up. And that's why there was the Ruto must go. It is the entire system, the extractive economic and political institutions, all these guys regrouping, you see the opposition coming together, the system is shaken. The only reaction they're going to give is come together. This audience that we must listen to Jimmy Wanjigi. Yes, as I said, he's someone who's been in the system, and there's much more this guy is knows that he has not yet been able to say. Probably, it's a bluff that is pulling on the system. That you guys, you have to listen to me, because I was in those rooms when such discussions were had. Oh, my time is up. Thank you so much, Maj. Yeah, let's let there be another speaker. But otherwise, the extractive economic institutions that is serving the political elite and the oligarchy. That is the problem.
Thank you, John. I'll circle you back again because I see you have a finance background. We'll need your expertise too. But I'm trying to just, make sure that people speak fast, and then we can go the second round, another 3 minutes each. Nanenane, welcome to the mic. Take a go.
Yes, hi Maj, how are you doing? Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I just wanted to chime into the conversation, and I have a different outlook of this whole thing. Is that how do we empower like our people, Kenyans, especially wale wako mashinani, so that they're able to understand what odious debt means. You see, most of them they're out in campaigns, and whenever like anything happens, you can see the president always runs mashinani anapanda juu ya magari because he speaks to. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Dennis, please mute your mic. Dennis, mute your mic. Let me mute Dennis. Kindly proceed.
Yeah, so my point is, as we are looking at solutions on how to get this odious debt thing to be worked on, how do we speak to the mashinani people to understand it? Because if these people don't understand it, tunaachiliwa tu was the people on Twitter or the.
I think we lost him. Can you hear him? Jelani, can you hear him?
I can't hear him personally.
Yeah, he's disappeared.
He was saying a very important thing about grassroots.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So my point was, I hope you can hear me now. Mnanisikia fiti?
Tunakusikia. Yeah.
Yeah, how do we get this information or this civic education to watu wa mashinani? You understand? We come to all these spaces and we speak, which is brilliant. But you realize this is not getting to watu wa huko, in the grassroots people. And that's why President Sayota anakimbiaga huko mashinani anapanda juu ya gari because anajua anaongelesha hao watu. Hao watu wengi wao, this information is not getting to them. And Jimmy has been speaking about this for a long time. Amekuwa huko Vibes, FM, Spice. I've been seeing him akiongea constantly. But it's just up to this a couple of weeks or a month ago is when people have actually picked it up because of the information being shared around the X spaces. But how does this information trickle down to watu wa mashinani? And this is a strategy that is being used by government to control the people. People are not empowered. And it's strategic, and they don't want people to be empowered. That's why people don't have jobs in Kenya. Watu wengi hawana majob, and they're not going to create these jobs. And that's why there are many slums. People are not trying to get rid of the slums. As long as Kenyans.
Yeah, I think we lost him again. I don't know, something with the network, probably.
Can you hear me, Marge?
Yes, we can hear you now. We lost you for some seconds there, but now we can hear you. Kindly proceed.
Yeah, so we have to look at this thing like, if the government will not empower the people, how do we empower them, even if we can't do it monetary, with knowledge, like the proper knowledge, so people understand some decisions being made by their leaders or their governor or their representative who's an MCA affects them directly. Mnanielewa? That's just my point I wanted to pass across. And thank you. And Paul, for the interruption. I don't know what's happening.
No, not a problem. That's a very good point you put across, because I remember during the campaigns we had to go, we formed some WhatsApp groups in the village. Now, but I think Jelani is doing some civic education. I don't know to what extent that is going to reach the grassroots level, but that's really a point not to be neglected, because anytime actually I wanted to have a laugh is that when I had then political opinion, then I would then share it with my late mom, and her opinion of it would be completely different. And you have to remember she has serious influence in the village, in the town, in the women group. So what I know is A, and might be at that point right, but she knows the B, which is right in other aspects, but her point is going to be spread more to the people who are even going to vote than my point from where I am. So really, that's a very good point there. So probably later, Nonini is going, Jelani is going to chime in and let us know how the civic education is going to really to be spread.
I could respond to that
Yes,
now,
please. Yeah,
since
yeah.
So one of the things that we found when we were doing our analysis of the conversations that we were having on social media is a lot of people think they know what the law says, but they have no idea. Another thing we found is that Kenyans hate to read. So even when people were trying to break down the finance bill and putting out tweets and threads and stuff, people were still not reading that information. But when there would be a graphic, I think somebody did a graphic, the people shall, and did some t-shirts that really drummed up what Article 1 says. So our goal with our civic education is to turn all this information, whether it's information that's contained in the Constitution of Kenya, information that's in the Penal Code, information that's in like the public debt audit that Wanjigi did, convert that into graphics and then translate it into 40 languages. What that will mean is that someone in Ushago, a boda boda guy at the heart of Mokoroini, can have his Kikuyu booklet that tells him what the law says, that even breaks down a concept as complicated as odious debt. Like anaweza elewa, oh, by the way, hawa watu walienda wakachukua loans wakakula. Being able to bring it down to actual images, take out all the legal jargon, and allow people down at word level to understand what we are talking about. Because up at Twitter, we are intellectuals, or we all have many degrees, we speak big English. But like you're right, people in Ushago, they have no idea. And I think part of why our movement failed, let me not say our movement failed, but why we did not have the impact we intended, is because people on the ground, they don't know what we are fighting for. They just know, si mulikuwa mnataka finance bill iondolewe na sasa imeondolewa. They don't know what the appropriations bill means. So being able to break down all those concepts into a language people can understand, into graphics, and disseminating this information, that is the goal of the civic education that we are doing. And hopefully, I know that's not enough. We've seen what Morara is doing with the videos where he goes to the ground and talks about projects that were launched that were never done. We've seen what Mushiri is doing with his, I think he's been translating certain, I think he translated the finance bill. I don't know what else he's translating into Kikuyu and other languages. We've seen Kimanzi as well. He had 2 or 3 videos that he was getting translated into some languages. My work is not enough. I think everybody needs to step up. If we can go to the churches, we can go to the marketplace. Kwa ule mama mboga na kuzia carrots, just like talk to them, explain to them in Sheng or whatever language they understand. each and every one of us has to do a level of civic education in our spheres of influence, so that we are all saying Ruto must go, everybody knows why we're saying it. And we also, by doing that, we get rid of this Mtuwetu narrative, because there's people still in Central who think that because Rigathi is deputy president, we are benefiting. There's people who think that, when it comes down to the ballot in 2027, that you could just vote for yourself and that is okay. So we need civic education, political education, and that's the scope of what I'm doing and the scope of what other people are doing. And hopefully that gets us closer to a liberated Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julani. And so the point about grassroots education is really important. And probably we're gonna, because
for 1 minute.
yes.
Yeah, so not to take away from what you are doing, Jelani and Maj. Also, you guys are doing a lot of civic education, and we really appreciate you for that, for holding these X spaces. Just one last point is, like the other day, Elon and Trump had an X space, and it had about 1.2 million people listening. But you have to understand, Uku US, the internet penetration is like what? Is like 96% of the population of the whole the US. So let's look at Kenya. What's the internet penetration? I think it's about 36 to 40%. That's what I read somewhere online. But who's responsible for making sure that Kenyans have internet? Is it the private sector? Is it the government? How do we hold these people accountable? Because if these things start penetrating uko mashinani, that's how information will start flowing. Thank you so much, and you guys are doing a good job.
Thanks, Sumini. What I was going to say is, like, when we were doing the campaigns, the 2022 campaigns, we had ideas of people actually having WhatsApp groups for the villages, because I think given the fact that we use the M-Pesa payment as a payment module, our villages actually have those phones, because they don't have the internet and things like that. But still, we can still find a way of trying to reach them at the grassroots level, not only online, but just through. It's going to take a lot of time. But I want to, at this point, warn that the government has already started buying influence through Kindiki. And that is how all of a sudden, although it's not even his mandate, he's introducing some money for the village elders, because he knows, and that is the point we're speaking about here. We want to reach them, but he is reaching them already. He's buying influence through money. So when you're going to talk to them later, you're talking to them about people who are actually already giving them money. They used to be pesa ya wazee, So, and it's a point we need to look into, but we also have to understand that the government has already started campaigning and is buying influence using our taxes and the influences they get from us, putting them in position. So let's put more effort. Okie dokie. Now, John, I'll give you more time. I give you only 3 minutes, but I'll round up again because the previous speakers had more. Mukuru, Fred, and then Kenya opinion. Mukuru? Kuru Genzi. Okay, then let's go with Fred Matiang'i for President 2027. Okay, if you're not able to speak, let's go to Kenyan opinion. Paul Kush, also not speaking. So Mzalendo, we're gonna go next. But Fred Matiang'i, I want to say at this point that Matiang'i himself was really more of a dictator, whom we do not want to give more power to oppress Kenyans. So Kenyan opinion, go then before and now everyone is speaking. Just 1 minute, I finish.
Allow me to go faster.
And who's speaking now?
Kenyan opinion.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Now, it is very good that we're having these kinds of discussions. And I want to talk about 3 of the issues and discussion. And the first thing I want to talk about is the debt issue. And it's becoming very clear that as a country, our problem is not debt. In fact, over time, I have come to realize that as a republic, debt is just a narrative that is being pushed by the government to keep the people of the republic from actually discussing the real issues that have been plaguing us as a nation. And all those issues are
basically one and the same summation of corruption and the looting of public resources and our natural resources. Because, in fact, even if we left the Jimmy Wanjigi story out and said, yeah, let's say we have a debt, but what should we do? If the government of the Republic of Kenya wanted to pay our debt today, it wouldn't even need a lot of them to do a lot of things, because it's becoming very clear that we have enough resources, natural resources, from precious stones to gold and diamonds and all those other kinds of stuff. We are capable of running our economy without all these debts. But they use it as a narrative to keep us blinded and to shut us up. Every time we say we are not doing well economically, they say, yeah, we have a debt, we need to pay. So it's very clear to me that we don't have a debt issue. So then the question becomes, what is it that we need to do about that whole thing? Because it's a narrative. What should we do to stop it? So the first thing we need to do is tell them that now we know we don't have a debt problem, and we know that there has been illegal things like illegal mining activities that have been going on. They should be able to cater for all our needs. We know there have been mineral resources, all these things. They should be able to cater for us. So stop pushing that narrative to us. Yes, we know all those things. The debts are odious. We don't even owe anybody a thing. And even if we did, it is not substantial, because if debt is a problem, then why are they still taking more debts? Even this very year, we have taken more debts. And even the president promised that because we have failed the finance bill, he's going to take 1 trillion. Yeah. So if debt is a problem, then why are they talking about taking more debts? Will you pile a problem over another? That is the first, my first take. The second issue is the issue of inclusivity and including everyone to the narrative and on our demonstrations. The thing is, we want everybody, even Jimmy Wanjigi, from all corners and all quarters. Welcome to the meal. Welcome to the family. But we have to be very careful, because these are the same people. Remember, as a student of history, how Jomo Kenyatta was gotten into the Mau Mau story while he never was actually a part of it. But he came and took control of the whole narrative. And today, 60 years down the line, we're still speaking of the same problem. So yes, I don't have a problem with every one of these people coming to the table. But we have to be very careful what seat we are giving them. I don't have a problem with people like Jimmy Wanjigi coming and joining the hall, but let them stay at the back seats, because we don't want them coming and take control of the narrative, because these people are narrative pushers, and they push narratives, take control of the narratives like Raila has always done, and then they end up conning the people. And by the time we realize it, we have lost the whole plot. And this is part of what actually made the protest to start losing momentum. So we cannot allow these people to come and take control of our story. We have a goal, and the goal is good governance that works for the people, and make sure that everybody is able to get food on the table, basic needs. That is all we're fighting for, a government that works for the people. So we must focus on the goal. How we achieve it is part of the process, and we cannot achieve it if we allow hijackers to come and take part of it. And I do suspect highly that people like Jimmy Wanjigi are being used as hijackers of the process. I know all these things they are coming out to tell us, they are true, and they are going to be very helpful in digesting.
Could you please land? We want to try to do 3 minutes each so that each speaker can speak. Thanks. Back to you.
Okay, let me just wrap it up. I think we need to allow them all in, but we also need to be very careful how and what we take from them. Again, let us try and do civic education as much as possible. Whenever you're talking with anybody, just share the information. Educate one person, educate another, and this story is all going to be out there to everybody slowly by slowly, and we are going to be there. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Kenyan Opinion. I'd like to then give John to get his other next 3 minutes because he got less. But I want to just point out the point that Kenyan Opinion is saying that Jimmy should be a backbencher. He cannot be, he will not be. He already has Uhuru Kenyatta in his pocket. He has Ruto in his pocket. He has Raila in his pocket. So let's talk to him while knowing that he's actually a kingmaker. And he confessed what people saw in him that would say now Jimmy can do this. He did not disclose everything, but let's not forget that he's not our normal private citizen. John, then Mzalendo.
Thank you so much, Maj.
Sorry, John. Now let's
Yeah.
kindly focus on the solutions as we try to close at the top of the hour. Back to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Allow me just to read. I have Orwell's 1984, just to concur with Jelani and Nonini. If there was hope, it must lie in the prose, because only there, in those swarming disregarded masses, 85% of the population of Oceania, could the force to destroy the party ever be generated. The party could not be overthrown from within. Jimmy is part of the establishment. Its enemies, if it had any enemies, had no way of coming together or even identifying one another. Even if the legendary brotherhood existed, as just possibly it might, it was inconceivable that its members could ever assemble in large numbers than twos or threes. Rebellion meant a look in the eyes and an inflection of the voice. At the most, an occasional whispered word. But the pros, if only they could somehow become conscious of their own strength, would have no need to conspire. They need only to rise up and shake themselves like a horse shaking off flies. If they choose, they could blow the party into pieces tomorrow morning. Surely, sooner or later, it must occur to them to do it. George Orwell, 1984. I'll finish up with this. I know we've said we want solutions to the problem, but I've been trying for the last few months, ever since we've been having the struggles as a country, to understand where the genesis of the problem. Because if we don't have proper diagnosis of the problem of the disease, we might be treating particular symptoms without ever reaching the goal. So the year is 1963. Kenya gets independence. What happens to Kenya and most sub-Saharan African countries, and you look at Southern America, other than some countries in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, the likes of Botswana, the system that the British created, the institutions that they built at independence, were inherited by our forefathers. They never took umbrage at the kind of exploitation that the people had, because it benefited them. It did benefit them and their family and their colleagues at a particular point, not knowing they're creating a monster that could be exploited later on. I am a believer, yes. Might be, edging towards conspiracy in this, but I do believe there are powers at work. But these powers, I mean corporations, the multinational. And still, yes, we can't discard what Jimmy's saying, but at the same time, be careful when part of the establishment comes out. We should not entreat. Be careful when the devil entreats you. No matter how gallant the party is, oh, be careful. Give no room to the devil. This is the establishment coming out and saying and bringing out all these things. And David D said something. I will end at this point. Not much, just something we can think about. I'm still reading, still trying to establish what is and what is not. David D tweeted and said, how can he be found when he staged his own abduction? David, we know him to be someone who, is with his rhetoric and all that. There's something he knows. Being an economic advisor of the president, there is something he's privy to about Jimmy Wanjigi, that the government knows where this man hides. They just can't go to him because they're creating a character. It's like a movie. There's a director. You're trying to make Michael Scott to become the best character in all of sitcom. So what do? Give a little bit of nuggets, make him the hero. Yes, listen to him. But I know if the system is coming after you, if the establishment is against you, they'll crush you. That I know. Again, Kenya is an important geopolitical country. I don't think the West will let us slide or get into economic oblivion. They'll always try to get us out, but at what cost? We must ask ourselves. The Western world is going to come to rescue us. We've seen IMF already meeting John Mbadi, all the SES. We saw Meg Whitman meeting with the miner, for pun intended. We must be careful. We must be really, really careful. We are treading on murky waters, but we cannot stop. We must do we must do that which we can. Thank you so much, Maj, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, John, for that. It was really, really very good. The submission there, we need to be very careful. I see that Willis has joined us. Welcome to the space. Directly going to you, I'm going to give you the mic. What's your opinion and what's going on in the expose with Jimmy? What do you have to say? What are just the first of all your opinion, and then the way forward, what we need to really go, because we are on solutions. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maj, for inviting me and allowing me to speak. First, what I want to say that it's quite unfortunate for someone to insinuate that Jimmy Wanjigi can organize whatever has happened to him. I'm his lawyer, and we were in court. I saw his family being attacked. I witnessed Maina being attacked by more than 10 police officers who are fully armed. Wamboy was slapped in the house. The wife was slapped in the house, pinned on the floor. I mean, if somebody will insinuate that all those acts of attacks, I spent 2 days in that home. My car was robbed. My wallet that had my debit cards, my money, US dollars 3,000, 5,000 Kenya shillings in the car armrest, my LSK card, they were taken by the police. I mean, we should not try to allow diversionary tactics when an injustice is being meted out on an individual. You don't have to like Jimmy Wanjigi, but at least give him his due respect and his fundamental rights. The second thing I want to say is this, and also before I conclude that, if Jimmy Wanjigi is capable of staging all of this, and David Ndii saying what he says, nothing will have stopped them from arresting even all those officers. Someone who can stage an attack on his own home, where at one given time there were more than 500 police officers from different contingents, from the ATPU to administration police to regular police to DCI to NIS. And ultimately, there was even a presidential jammer, that brown Prado, that is normally part of the advance team for the president, that disconnects all communications. At some point, when we were trying to drive out of the compound, all our car keys were not turning on. I didn't even know that that is possible with a jammer. They had disconnected all electronic transmissions from cars that use electronic keys. So, I mean, it's actually unbelievable that someone will think Jimmy will organize all of that or have the capacity to organize that kind of atrocity against himself, his family, his friends, and his own lawyer. And today, even as we speak, 4 members of Bunge la Mwananchi Jacaranda have been held in police custody to date. They've gotten custodial orders against them, and they're trying to charge them for the fabricated offenses. It will take an extreme genius to organize and coordinate with all those agencies that now it's reduced to David Ndii saying that he's organized all of this. But fundamentally, the most important thing I wanted to say is this. Whatever Jimmy has spoken about, he didn't start speaking about it last week or this week. When Uhuru Kenyatta was still president in the month of July before the elections, Jimmy Wanjigi presented his own forensic audit of the national debt. And he presented it in a paid up advert that was aired on NTV, detailing what, in his view, were debts which were taken in a manner that did not comply with the laws of Kenya. At the time, people dismissed whatever he was saying. Some say that maybe it's just a disgruntled candidate who has been blocked from participating in the election. But he was saying this is the problem we are going to face. At that time, he was saying you are spending 60% of your revenue to debt finance. Now we are almost at 80% of your tax revenue going to debt finance. And he was saying this is going to be a problem way in the future. And from that July, before the election of 2022, to date,
I cannot hear you. Can anyone else hear him?
No.
Yeah, I think we lost him. Willis, we lost you. Okay, let me text him that we cannot hear him. As we wait for him to come back, I think, wait. Mkuru, are you able to speak? Because if you're not able to speak, then I will remove you from the panel and bring on somebody else because you've been on the panel the whole time. Mukuru, then Fred Matiangi, are you able to speak? Because otherwise we free those two mics as we wait for Willis to continue. Okay, Willis, kindly proceed if you can. You can now speak because we couldn't hear you. Okay, let me remove this from the speaker. Otherwise, Mzalendo take a go as we wait for him. Okay.
he's done his math.
Thank you so much,
Hold on.
Maj. Am I
Yeah,
audible?
hold on, Mzalendo. Willis, we were not hearing you the last 1 minute or 30
Okay,
seconds.
sorry.
So kindly
Let me
proceed.
just repeat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what Jimmy has done, he's gone back to our debt books and he's looked at Section 15 of the PFM Act. You only take debt for project finance if you're doing a development project. The only time the law allows you to borrow a debt for recurrent expenditure is only a pegged percentage of not more than 5% of the previous year's audited accounts, which, if you look at the math, it can only be around 100 billion Kenya shillings. Now, Jimmy has looked at our debt in the last. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can
Okay,
hear
I
you.
can
Yeah.
continue. If you look at our debt portfolio in the last 13 years, Jimmy has said, look at all the debts that were taken. What project did they finance? And where did Parliament approve for that debt to be taken? And that is what Jimmy says is what is called odious debt. That where you find a debt, and for example, is picked on domestic debt. If you pick on domestic debt, these banks borrowing, lending money to government, which project are they financing with these bills and bonds? Where is the parliamentary approval for that particular borrowing to be taken? And he says it's not there. If that be the case, then the debt that has been taken through bills and bonds is odious. It's illegal debt. And why are they doing it? I mean, those are questions that people can deal with without trying to distract Kenyans to start discussing the character of Jimmy Wanjigi, the messenger. He simply posed the issue. Let whoever has alternative facts bring them forward and say, we've taken this much domestic debt. This is where Parliament anchored or approved that debt to be taken. This is the project which that debt financed. If that does not exist, then all of us will agree that the bulk of our domestic debt, in fact, all of it in the last 5 years or so, even more, has been odious. It has been illegally taken. And you ask, why are they taking it illegally? And if you agree, if you notice, debt is taxed in advance. Because the debt you took this year will be paid with the tax collection of next year, the year after. So why are they taking debt without following the laid down procedures? Is it convenience? Is it peradventure? Is it that somebody wants to steal the tax in advance by taking this debt in the manner that does not comply with our constitution? He has done what we call a balanced primary uh, balance, primary balance of our revenues vis-a-vis expenditures in the last 13 years, removing what we'll call as payments for debt finance. And he says, if you take all the revenue that the Kenyan people collected and declared by KRA and posted in the Kenya Gazette by the Treasury. We collected in that period 13.3 trillion on revenue. Then he has looked at all the expenditures minus debt. What in our books we spent this money on. Our entire expenditure minus debt was 14.6 trillion. And taking a debt is normally meant to plug in the deficit. And Jimmy says, if all your money that you collected was 13.3 trillion, all your expenditures minus debt was 14.6 trillion, your deficit was 1.3 trillion. Anybody can do that math. And the documents that he's using to calculate these figures are publicly available. They are documents published by the Central Bank, National Treasury, KRA. He says your deficit was 1.3 trillion. So in that period of 10 years, if you wanted to borrow money, because debt is meant to plug a deficit, what is missing? It was only a deficit of 1.3 trillion, but we took 7.7 trillion. Now, I believe that is something any Kenyan can do the math and ask the question, why did we borrow 7.7 trillion when the deficit was only 1.3 trillion? We can do that without necessarily focusing on the personality of Jimmy Wanjigi and trying to attack him. Anybody who wants to start discussing the personality to distract, you want to throw mud at Jimmy Wanjigi, do not fly. That is not our problem. Jimmy Wanjigi is not our problem. Our problem is debt and the people who are perpetuating these illegal debts. Let's ask them to give answers. If they took debt to spend on recurrent expenditure, let them come and say. Then as a people, we ask them, why did you spend our money on recurrent expenditure when our laws told you cannot do it? What informed that decision? And this is important because, especially if you take on the domestic debt pockets, government is borrowing from the domestic market. At some point, it was even 18%. It has been oscillating between 15 to 18%. When government is borrowing from the domestic market at 18 to 16, 15 to 18%, it crowds out you and I, the private sector, from accessing capital. And yet it is our own taxpayers' money that will be used to pay that interest. And it is our deposit in the banks that is lent to our government. So why was government going through this? And even to make it, even some of our money that is collected through government agencies that is banked in the same banks, they use it to lend it to the same government. So you find money in government accounts held in the banks is lent to government at exorbitant interest rates, and then they come back to the taxpayer to collect more taxes to pay that interest rate on the money which belonged to government in government accounts that was lent to the same government. I mean, these are questions that can be asked without trying to distract people from the messenger who is opening the eyes of the people of Kenya. Thank you very much, Maj. Yes,
Yes,
sorry.
let me chime in. Let me give you a question there. I mean, Jimmy Wanjigi just also on national TV said that he was approached by both Ruto and Uhuru for help. And by that, he, acknowledged, or he let us know, the strengths that those both two presidents saw in him. And he's also friends with Raila, So my statement previously, before probably you joined, is that we need not forget that he has some instruments of power. And I like the way he actually openly said, because this is something most Kenyans do not want to hear, with being governed by the gun and by the money. So as such, even though he's your client, which I really respect, I just want to say that we cannot look away from the fact that he is indeed influential. But we do not want to, because where you're right is where the point that somebody cited what Ndegwa was sharing. So that I want to also say that this is a league that they play. These are friends out there. So if they say things, they know the things why they're saying it. So in those statements, they can know, the genesis and everything. So those we don't want to, to malign people also in this space. So at that point, I agree with you. The point where we are not probably in the same line is where I see Jimmy as somebody who's very influential. I see him as somebody who has Uhuru in his pocket, Ruto in his pocket, and Raila in his pocket. That's my subjective opinion. Is that good or bad? Can be good, can be bad. But as we proceed now, what are the solutions?
Can I respond to that just
Yes,
for
please.
2 minutes?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy has never shied away or failed to publicly disclose his associations with Uhuru, with Ruto, with Raila. And he's given several public interviews on that relationship. But the fact that you have, at one point or another, been associated with someone or you've been allies does not mean that now you carry their burdens, that you are forever indebted to them, or every ill they do, you must cheerlead. What makes a relationship or a country great is when, even within the friendship or the association, people can disagree on ideas. And if you believe that what they are doing is wrong, is not for the public, is not in the interest of the nation, or does not believe in what they are doing in terms of principles, you walk away. So Jimmy Wanjigi principally disagreed with Uhuru Kenyatta on the SGR project, not as a tenderpreneur trying to ask for the project for himself, but on the cost. He said SGR should be a PPP, no government money, private sector bring the money and put up the line, upgrade the existing line to be a standard gauge railway. Uhuru's people seem to believe that they should be spending government money to put up a railway from Mombasa to Nairobi at 350 billion Kenya shillings. The plan that Jimmy had prepared was an SGR from Mombasa to Malaba at the cost of 55 billion Kenya shillings. Yet these guys want to, and that is not government money, private sector money. All government was doing was allowing access to the land. But the private sector was putting their money to build that SGR. Uhuru Kenyatta thought it was okay to spend 350 billion from Mombasa to Nairobi, not even Malaba. 350 billion. And he said, no, this is something that ultimately is going to cost this country. And he walked away. So some people try to insinuate he was in the SGR contract tender. He was not. And he made it clear. In fact, at one point, Uhuru called his entire cabinet standing outside the steps of State House, where they called the person they were calling the business cartel, who is anti-development, trying to stop a project that is going to build this country. They took ownership of their project and they did it. Now, if the easier way out for Jimmy would have been to say, since this money is going to come from government, now we are not going to spend private money. He could have easily said, okay, fine, let me get in and continue with it. We eat the money together. He chose not to. He walked out. He didn't participate in that grand haste. He walked out. Any other Kenyan would have said, if you're going to get 350 billion for nothing, why not? So he disagreed with Uhuru on that, and they parted ways. When Raila, his great friend, did a handshake with Uhuru, he didn't agree with that handshake with Uhuru, but he recognized Raila's right to have a handshake, and he kept away. When Ruto even came to the NDC of Safina Party, and he told him, I'm not joining your political campaign. You come here just like I invited in every other political party leader and presidential candidates to attend my annual delegates congress. You can attend. Does not mean that now you are enemies, but I'm not supporting you. And when he was blocked from being on the ballot, he kept away from the entire campaign. He didn't campaign for any of the two. Didn't even endorse any of the other candidates who stayed on the ballot. He kept away and he kept quiet. But people take advantage of Jimmy's long silence because he doesn't speak for himself most of the times. He's largely been a media shy person.
Yeah.
So a lot of character people have tried to create an image of Mr. Wanjigi in the way they perceive him without him being asked some of these questions. That is why actually I felt it when somebody called me that this space was going on. And maybe it's time. Yeah. Let me get in. If Jimmy is not going to speak for himself.
Really, what is it called? Somebody was snitching on us. It's good to know.
No, somebody just told me that there's a space going on, your clan is being discussed. I said, okay, fine. He can't speak for himself, I'll appear. And if there be any question, because this is somebody I've been with now for over almost now 10 years plus.
Okay.
And the things that you hear said about him that are meant to divert us from the real issue, because the main thing is the issue that is affecting the country. Can we focus on the issue? Because
Yes.
ultimately, with or without Jimmy Wanjigi,
Yeah.
this problem is here.
Yeah, and that's the point where I want you to come in. First of all, I have one question that's more of a refreshment, and then the question is really the way forward and how we get out of all these problems. So the first question is: you said that he disagreed with Uhuru on the SGR. Probably this information is already out there, but my question at this point is, and just that's a reminder of which role was he playing in this. He did,
In terms of,
when he disagreed with him and was advising, which role was.
because the point is, the SGR project was conceptualized by the Raila and Kibaki government, the Grand Coalition. They are the ones who had conceptualized and done all the feasibility studies. And he was aware of what they were doing. So he was saying, open it up for a PPP, let people tender. And he was looking forward to
As
an
who?
open tender process.
As who?
As a Kenyan citizen.
Yeah, but
Just like anybody.
Willis, me and you don't go advising Uhuru Kenyatta, and
No,
that's the point.
when
And that's the
when I
point I was
tell you,
trying to put
maybe
out
what,
there.
okay,
Yeah.
if that be the question, that's why I said it's not like he didn't have access to Uhuru Kenyatta. He had access to him. He had access to Ruto. He had access to Raila. So if it is being discussed as a person who has access to, they will tell them, no, why are you going this route? Take this thing to that what the Kibaki cabinet had passed. Take it through a public PPP process. Let the best consortium that can put up the PPP come in and do it. Why do you want to spend public money on it? And he had already put up a team that, amongst others, that were interested in that venture.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
so the point is, we should not say that as who, even you, if you had access to Uhuru Kenyatta, you have a right to tell him the path you are going on this particular project is wrong. Why don't you allow be a privately driven venture? So yes, he had access to Uhuru Kenyatta at the time, and he told him, just like anybody else. But Uhuru Kenyatta made the ultimate executive decision on the path. Jimmy couldn't influence that decision. He was not a member of the cabinet that now made the decision or owned the process and said we are going through this. Right now, I'm talking on this platform.
So you see,
I am
Willis,
also.
if I just interrupt you a little bit, see, that is where the problem comes in. If you're the problem, if you're the president, and I advise you as a friend, I don't have the mandate. So even if you are disrespecting is the wrong word, but not taking my advice, then it becomes really, I can advise however I want, but it still will not be done how it was supposed to be done. Had Jimmy had authority, I know he can advise as a friend, then it would be like we need to get away from these relations, and actually have strong institutions whereby we would be discussing the point where a presidency ignored this cabinet, or we ignored, then we're going to move on. But at this point, that's why I was asking as who, because we should not have a
But even now, even your space right now, what you are hosting, this space you are hosting, you are offering advice to the executive. It is. I'm sure even they're on your space listening to you. And if they don't agree with the position that you're proposing, doesn't mean even if you are supporting them or you're not supporting them, doesn't mean that you have authority over them, control over them. You've just aired your view. And the spaces that have been held in this country in the last, let me say, 2 months or so, have been spaces where people are expressing their own individual positions and sentiments on issues of governance. Some of the people who have spoken have previously been members even of Ruto's party. And they are saying, the path you're going, we don't agree with it. And if you believe the issue is going to have a greater impact on the quality of life in the country, then you have a right also to, because as a Kenyan, doesn't mean that if there's an executive that you keep quiet and never share your views, they know everything, know it all. No. You have a right to raise an alarm and say, hey, wait a minute, this path you've taken is going to cost the whole country. And Jimmy did that. As any Kenyan will have done. Today, Kenyans are doing it on the space almost every week. I'm seeing spaces everywhere.
Yeah, but they don't
Yeah.
have a mandate. That's the point I was
No,
going
they
to.
have. That is, no. What I am disputing is this. You see, the concept of Kenyans don't have a mandate. Kenyans have a mandate and they have a right and a duty to participate in their governance and to express their views on everything the government is doing. What they lack is the capacity or the authority to implement their views. That authority resides in the executive.
That's
So
what I
Jimmy
was
gave
talking
his views.
about. That's what I was
Yes.
talking about, the
Okay.
implementation. But I think I'm having
Implementation
yes.
rests in the executive.
Yeah, so that's my problem that I'm having, because you talk about me advising the executive, or they're listening here. I would tell you point blank that even as I sit here, there are people who've reached out to me and want me to work for them. I said no, you know. So yes, I could advise, but when I'm advising, I want to be at the position of advising as you know, as an official, whereby I have the constitution, and we were following some procedure, because otherwise we are running a country like, you know, our backyards, and this is not to
Look at Article 10 of the Constitution and Article 118 of the Constitution on public participation, and then look at the Court of Appeal decision on the 2023 Finance Bill, where the court actually says the executive is not an absolute. They don't know it all. They must take into account the people's views. They must take into account Marge's views. And if they disagree with Marge, they have a responsibility to note why they've made a decision contrary to what Marge and a majority of the people who presented their views on that issue took. So I seem to disagree when you are moving on the premise that the executive know it all and the people don't have to speak.
no.
We just have,
That's
so what I'm
that's a
urging you, what I'm urging you is that when people
you're
speak on an issue,
misunderstanding me, and I would
okay, I'm sorry
wish
if I
to
misunderstand you.
I'd wish to
What I'm
correct.
saying,
Can I proceed?
okay,
Thank you. I wish to correct that, you know. So what I'm trying to say, if you were supposed to do something, because there are people who are advised and who, you know, you have to do a public participation. But when it reaches, let's say we're talking about energy, and you have that cabinet, you as Willis should be making those decisions, and you as Willis should be allowed to work according to what the powers should be given to you. Absolutely. So when you're doing
what does it mean to be allowed to work? Because no one stops cabinet meetings.
To be allowed to really implement, you know, what your position allows you to do. We shouldn't have situations whereby Muturi is coming out to say the president does not listen to me and things like that. So what I'm saying is public participation, that is fine, that happens. But now we have a situation whereby there are people in the government who are not able to perform their functions as they're supposed to be, because you know, our system as it is does not allow. If it would allow, then we would have actually, because then explain to me why we have all the time the courts are declaring things that have gone through the parliament and the other things unconstitutional. They're working against the constitution day in, day out. If they would, so that's my point. So actually we are talking about the same thing. I think we're just misunderstanding each other.
Maybe.
So the people have a right, the people have the power, and I don't want us to be the only one talking here. I'll just finish,
I was actually worried about that.
and then the people can chime in with questions. So
on my
and
way
that
forward,
is the point where I'm saying, client or not, I find it very problematic when private citizens are really even coming up again, because they're sharing with us, but it seems like, you know, it was shaky, because you know, that is where I use the word mandate. You know, when you have a CS, for example, or whatever, then you're letting them work the way, you know, they have the constitution in the back. That is what happens in other countries. That's why other countries are really moving forward and we are not moving forward, because you find mtu atasema no, huwezi fanya hivyo, anataka. So we need really to have institutions that are working. But again, finish, because I interrupted you, and then people are going to come in and ask you those questions. Yeah.
What I was going to say is this. Ultimately, it is all about the best interest of the people of Kenya. Anybody holding a public office, it's a public trust. Whatever decision you make, whatever you do, you are doing it for the benefit of the people of Kenya. And the people of Kenya have a right to agree with your decision. They have a right to disagree with your decision. And they can follow the Constitution in expressing their like or dislike with the Constitution. And Jimmy Wanjigi is a private citizen like any other private citizen in this Kenya, and he has the same rights that anybody else has. Thank you.
Thanks. So now we go to Mzalendo, and now that Willis was kind enough to join us, you could ask those questions, but let's now concentrate on solutions, because what has been shared to ours is nothing new. But why do they keep happening? How can we prevent? What's the strategy moving forward? Mzalendo? And now let's take 2 minutes each. Mzalendo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Maj, mkiwa pamoja na diaspora. I want to echo what Willis has said. The last time Jimmy Wanjigi came to the media was when after being harassed by the Ruto. And by that time, Jimmy spoke about the SGR tender. And it actually came out in the limelight with the Auditor General's report that the SGR was a scam, and that Jimmy's sentiments were actually true. It even came to a point where the likes of Dennis Itumbi were saying that it is Jimmy, being a friend to Uhuru and Ruto, was the one who was leaking information to Raila Odinga. So when Jimmy speaks that in 10 years period, 10 financial years, the only deficit the government had is 1.3 trillion. I tend to buy Jimmy's argument, because the last time he spoke, it came out in the limelight that it was actually the gospel truth. Now, by dissecting what Jimmy said, if in 10 years we had a deficit of 1.3 trillion, now these trillions that Uhuruto borrowed, I think as a nation we need to start a hashtag: reject dubious, odious debts, and we fail to pay these odious debts. Because if we actually had a deficit of 1.3 trillion, why have we borrowed 7 trillion? Where has the money gone to? And then you had the other day, when Njuguna Ndungu was leaving, he was actually speaking something that was alluded to what Jimmy was saying, that actually the taxes that are being pushed to Kenyans is not are not effective. Means the Dr. Njuguna Ndungu knows something, and he can attest to it ya kwamba these taxes that we are being forced to pay ya kwamba tunalipa madeni are not taken to where it is supposed to go. So as a nation, we need to start the hashtag reject odious debts, and we kwanza these IMF guys, we need even to take them to the international courts, that they are colluding with the Kenyan government to rob us. Because I was reading an act where how IMF gives money, and they need now to get information back. How was the money that we gave you in the last financial year used? Is there evidence that this project has been done? Like now, Jimmy says that Ruto borrowed 1.7 trillion and only 300 billion was used in development. So where has the rest of the money gone? And then somebody comes and tells us that that Jimmy was acting an episode. I don't agree with that, because the last time Jimmy spoke on the SGR, it was the truth. It came out to be the truth. Now, as a nation, we need to start a hashtag, because what I have realized with this government is that the only thing that keeps them at bay is starting a hashtag. That is the only thing that will make them speak the truth. The other day, they denied that they were not selling the airport. Sorry, I'm landing. I'm landing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. The other day, they denied they were not selling the airport. At long last, it came to be the gospel truth that they were selling the airport. So this government, the only thing that keeps them at bay is a hashtag. So if we start a hashtag, reject odious debts, and we get MIF involved in this, they will come out in the limelight and tell us the truth, and it will come to be known that Jimmy was speaking the truth. So tuanzeni Hashtag, and lastly, I'm very sorry about the farmers of Kenya when you wanapanda dengu, because now the government says that if you grow dengu,
Mzalendo, no,
they
no, no.
need
I'll have to
to pay
cut you
1
now.
million.
No. We have to stick to the topic, please, because otherwise we'll be talking and talking and talking. Thank you so much. So, guys, I'm going to queue 3 more and then route back to Willis for answering of questions. Let's go to Nelly, Deborah, then Daniel. 3 minutes each. And also, let's remember that the hashtags they don't reach the villages, just like Nonini mentioned, and also Jelani before. We need to get that education to the grassroots level. Teva, I see you're going to go. Nelly, and then Deborah, yeah.
I'm here. Good evening. So I'm here also to give my contribution concerning what Jimmy said the other day. One thing we have to accept that there has been an evolution of another generation. By the time SDR was being brought out, people were still in the dark. It's not like people were not civilized enough. The population that were being given that information were not ready to react the way this generation has done. There was a gap there of knowledge and accountability. So that's why this is the right time that this message has come, and it's beautiful in its own time. In fact, we have to appreciate, because this is the right time that things were being made known, and we are pondering, and we are going to look into it and to see way out. Another thing is that it's very sad to realize that these people, even you are calling here Matiang'i, and many people were in the government. I think they also people, those are the people that were eating money, not knowing that it will come a time that the generation that when wamekuwa kinyanyasa, they will come to know this information. Hao watu wote wametembea, they have been the one who have eating SDR money, zinaenda kulala, sijui zinaenda wapi. Those are people who have been eating our money and looting. Sasa sasa hii imefika mahali wanajua they should not come here to sanitize. Wanjigi said that he's the one who has been supplying us with the flags, with water and everything. That thing she really is sure that Wanjigi is out at least to save this nation. He's a man of good heart and with good faith to stand with us. So he's the kingmaker, as one of us has said. There is a man to watch also to see how he can help us. And I also want also to tell you that we don't have to wait for 2027. With all these things, if we're told tukiacha tu Ruto hapa kidogo, utakuta deni imefika 10 trillion. I don't know for how long are we going to hold these meetings so that we can embark on this, the business of removing this government in the office. That's what my question, that's my contribution.
Thanks so
Otherwise,
much,
thank you.
Nelly. Deborah, over to you.
Hi, Marge. Thank you for hosting this forum. About dissecting what Jimmy Wanjigi expose is, one thing I'd like to say is why the systems don't work in Kenya. Yes, we have systems, but they're purposely put not to work. Like right now, yes, we have CS and all that, but the person running all these things is Ruto. Ruto is a micromanager. So we can have all this CS, everybody advising, but Ruto is the one who's making his own decision. So yes, we have systems, but they're being made not to work. And then also regarding Jimmy, we don't kill the messenger, you know? We hear what the messenger has brought, and then it's our duty as citizens to dissect it, to find out, is it true? We need to investigate the expose. He has said this amount of money was taken. I don't just take it as a gospel truth. We need to investigate. Somebody like George Anamo, he used to do a lot of investigative journalism. Why can somebody go out and investigate this and come out and say, okay, Jimmy Wanjigi said this, we have investigated, this is what we've come up with. So I would not beat the messenger. And also, whistleblowers, there are laws here in the US that protect the whistleblower. You can be in a company working for that company and you whistleblow things happening in that company, and the laws will protect you. So to me, I would take Jimmy Wanjigi as a whistleblower, even if he was a friend to Raila, to Uhuru, to Ruto. Now he's being taken as a whistleblower. He has brought this thing out to the limelight. Now, how do we take it from here? How do we investigate and find out, is it true? Has Kenyan borrowed all this money? Where has this money gone? And then for the diaspora who are here, IMF is an American institution. You have your representative where you are. You can write to them and inquire. IMF is lending money to Kenya. As an American citizen and as a voter in your district, I would like you to go to Congress and find out, where did this money go? I would like a report. How was this money used? You know, us in here in the diaspora, we have a lot of leverage that we can do. If indeed IMF gave money to Kenya and it was not used for the purpose that it was intended to, we as American citizens can hold our representative to task and ask them, as an American citizen, as a Kenyan American citizen, I want to find out, IMF gave this money to Kenya. How was it used? Can you account for each and every dollar that went to Kenya? If we have a lot of voices going on and asking our representatives here, we will find an answer. So yes, it's a good thing. An expose is out. So it's up to us, diaspora. Let's do our due diligence. Let's write to our congressmen. Let's write to our representatives. Let's make trips to Washington. Let's make trip to the IMF in Washington, D.C. and find out, you gave this money. What was it used for? So I think it's a good thing. Now it's up to us. Let's take the task and find out. If they gave the money, what was the money used for? And then we also get these investigative journalists like Namu, Jonah Namu, and all these people. Do your own investigation and then come back to us and tell us, is it true what Jim is saying? But I think we should not just be the messenger that he's part of them and all that. To me, I would take Jimmy as a whistleblower. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Actually, I had another question for Willis. I see he's dropped, so we'll bring him back. But now, talking about questioning the debt, also from the diaspora, the last time we had a session with the Citizen, and there was a Kenyan in the US who is a professor. I'm trying to remember his name, Monda, something like that. He said the journalists went to dance and take selfies when Ruto visited the US. But until to date, that's why I'm talking about implementation. Until to date, nobody has discussed the deals that were made in the US. Deborah, you're in the US. Yeah. So the journalists back home are disappointing, and the diasporans also, they try. A lot of them try, but where is the journalistic responsibility of finding out what is going on? So you are right that the journalists are supposed to do to find out. Let them also tell us the deals. Until today, since Ruto went to US, nobody has really outlined those. They need to outline. The question that I have to Will is during the interview with Yvonne, she was mentioning the consequences that there would be if we refuse as a country to pay the debts that are illegal at this point. And I missed the journalistic research of her having her research and telling us that. So what are the legal implications of that? I hear Okia had already talked about it briefly, but if you could just chime in, Willis, on that, about the legal implications of us not paying those debts, it would be great. And then I chime in for other speakers, and then they can direct their questions to you. Over to you, Willis.
Okay. Thank you, Maj. The first thing that I must say is this. The concept of odious debt is not unique to Kenya. It started with the Americans when they took over some of the Spanish territories. The recent application of this concept was when we had the Mozambique tuna bond saga and then the Malaysian 1MDB scandal, where countries have had occasion to look at debts which were taken in their names, and they're saying our laws were not followed. Why should the sovereign, the people of that country, take the responsibility of paying debts when rogue officials decided to take debt in the name of the country without following the country's laws? How does it become a binding debt on the sovereign? So also in Kenya, it is upon us to say, if there was a debt which was taken without following our laws, Why does it become the responsibility of the sovereign, the people, to pay for that debt? If our laws are very clear on how debt is supposed to be taken, how it's supposed to be utilized, the approvals of parliament, why give it to the people of Kenya to be the owner of that debt? The answer is that the people of Kenya, because we are a country of laws, have a right to say, no, we will not pay for it. And then now you hold culpable those individual officials who signed for that debt, those banks that gave the money and refused and or failed to conduct due diligence. Because if you want to take a loan, the responsibility is not only on the lender, but also on the borrower, but also on the lender to ask, conduct their own due diligence to ascertain that you have the authority to take that particular loan. If the lenders did not do their due diligence, they were just driven by profit because they conclude that, oh, it's a sovereign debt, let the people of that country pay for it, then they must bear the responsibility. They must face the consequences. When the people say, no, that loan was taken in our name, but it was not taken in accordance with our laws. In Mozambique, Credit Suisse collapsed. People went to court. In fact, some officials of Credit Suisse have been arraigned in court for that act. So also in Kenya, we can tell the banks that have lent money to Kenya government illegally that will not pay, and there'll be consequences. Those bank officials should be in court. The public officials who superintended over the illegal debt should be in court, and they should answer. They should be criminally culpable. That is when you can say the country will be in a position to move forward, and it moves forward in this way. In the short term, they'll be paying because then you don't have access to international lending. But you have an instant relief in the sense that whereas you have an obligation to pay 80% of your own revenue as debt, that obligation goes away. So the new administration will have to learn how to live within its means and not rely on international finance or access to domestic market to implement its own projects. That is something that Kenyans will do at some point. It will either be voluntary or involuntary. Involuntary is where, in all of this, right now, when Jimmy started speaking, we were at 55% of our revenue going to debt. Now we're at 80% of our revenue going to debt. So it means this number is increasing every day, this percentage. When it gets to almost 90%, the system will collapse. Either you'll default on your debt or you'll stop paying salaries or you will fail getting services from government. Once it collapses, you will be forced to confront the danger of why are we not able to function financially. And you will not be able to function financially because of this debt that now you've defaulted on. You either do an inquest on it, judicial inquest on it, or you attempt what Moi did in 95. You try to restructure the debt and renegotiate it. But even if they restructure it, they renegotiate it, the question that Kenyans have to ask is, why are you still imposing this odious debt, this illegal debt on us? Why am I now forced to pay for a debt which was taken without following our laws? When the people ask that question, we will end up having a judicial or a commission of inquiry to inquire into the debt, and the ones which are legit, we pay. The ones which are illegit, we say no, we are not paying for it. This is a quest that any Kenyan, beyond even Jimmy Wanjigi, has a responsibility to push and demand of, because it's your money. It's not Jimmy's money. It's not government does not have any money. Government collects its money from the people of Kenya. And I wait for the day Treasury will release to the people of Kenya, as required in Article 10 on the principles of governance, one of them being transparency, and then we also have accountability. The list of all the debts that have been taken the last 14 years. Release the list of all the payments which have been made towards debt finance, the list of all the projects the debt financed, and the list of all the approvals that the parliament gave for the taking of those debts. If that list were to be shared with all Kenyans, I assure you, you will not need Jimmy to come up and tell you this is the odious one. Every Kenyan who has access to that list will be able to say, here we can see the debt, we cannot see the parliamentary approval, we cannot see the project, odious, don't pay it. This one we can see the parliamentary approval, we can see the project, legit, pay it. This one, we've overpaid the interest rate, We ignore it. As I conclude, I want to remind the listeners that there's a World Bank report which came out sometimes late last year, warning African countries on this new emerging trend to take sovereign bonds. Sovereign bonds, which have very onerous payment terms that are going to collapse the financial systems. And some of those sovereign bonds are taken in a way that does not address the economic needs of the nations, does not comply with the nation's laws, and ultimately they have high interest rates that those nations' GDPs cannot support or sustain. We are now exactly where that report was projecting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Willis. As we proceed, let's not forget to also build the network by following each other. Kenya, I see your hand, and I'm trying to now end the space at the top of the hour. So let's kindly really minimize and probably just try to shoot questions as we concentrate on the solutions. Kenya, then Mwaura.
Okay, before I speak,
Yes, I
can you hear
can.
me much? Okay, so I'm just taking a walk, but believe you me, I have to do this fire by force. So one thing I'm not understanding is why are we so concerned about, when I had the information about the debt, I was like, Jimmy is just like any other politician. And the time I'm coming to know this is when we started all this conversation of, finance bill and everything. Then I said, let me also do my own follow-up because, like what Jimmy said, this information is all in the public. I have no business even campaigning for Jimmy. I don't give a fuck about that. Let me be honest. But I was like, I'm only concerned about the death. I'm only concerned about this information. I think we are really losing focus on, Jimmy was their friend. No, is this information true? So I said, let me follow up on a very simple thing because this information is out there. Because we have been told, we'll form a commission that is going to make an inquiry on the debt. But again, then the Auditor General has already done that, and that information is in the public. So that was the first. There was a space that Peter Salasya spoke and said like that money never came and everything. So then I was like, no way you can tell me this money never came to the country. Then I was like, let me just dig because all this information that Jimmy has provided, you don't even require an investigative journalist for what? The information is out there. That you can see. I shared even a simple one that was from the Auditor General that shows 1 billion never came to the country, and the one that came to the country, it can't be traced to any project. So it means that debt doesn't exist according to our laws. So what I want to say is let's focus on the information because this information is in the public domain. Who has brought the information at this point? I don't care. What is this information true? And that is something that we are looking at it and we are realizing this information is all in the public domain. Nothing is not deviating. There is nothing. He hasn't cooked even a single figure. I even read the document, the Kenya East fraud, the forensic audit that was done. You can look at it, go compare the figures that are out in the public. You just require just having an understanding of simple English and Google. You are sorted. So that's the conversation we should be having. I don't even care about Jimmy Wanjigi's ambitions of being a president.
Thank you so much, Kenya. Let's go to Maura, Robert, and then Kenyans. I see you have skipped you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me,
Yes, I
much?
can.
From
Yeah,
much?
go on.
Okay, asante sana. Yeah, thank you, Bwana Otieno, Bwana Willis, for making time for us. Now, there is something you have talked, and I would like us, Kenya, to take this from this angle. You have mentioned about the hidden debt of the 2 billion tuna board in Mozambique. You know, a lot of people were jailed, and 7 days ago, the finance minister, Manuel Chang, who was extradited to United States from South Africa, where he had done to. 7 days ago, he was convicted because he took a bribe of $7 million so that he can facilitate that hidden debt. Actually, it's known as the hidden 2 billion tuna board loan in Mozambique. They borrowed this money. Those people with the head of intelligence and the son of the president also benefited. All these people today they are languishing in Mozambique jail, having been jailed from 9 to 15 years. But on 7 days ago, this minister, who was finance minister by then in Mozambique, Chang, was convicted. He's now sitting waiting for sentencing in New York, in the district of Manhattan. Why? Because he took bribe, and this money was borrowed against was borrowed without the knowledge of Mozambique government as per the constitution. So why don't we follow that kind of of thought, and then we find, let's say, we hire, let's say, a private auditing firm like Pricewaterhouse or Ernst Young, and then they do the audit. If there is anybody in Kenya government, particularly from 2013 to 2022, who borrowed the money on behalf of the Kenya government without the authorization of the parliament as required, should be jailed and should be held accountable, and his or her property should be confiscated. Why don't we follow such a line, Mr. Wires Otieno? Thank you. And also for SGR, why haven't the contract been made public? Have we also asked you that question? We Kenyans, we want to see how that project that cost us almost 400 billion, how the contract was signed, what were the terms, the agreement. We want to say, because no government want to release it. Can it be this to us? Thank you, Mr. Otieno, and you can answer that my questions.
Thanks so much, Maura. Let's go to Kenyans and then Tevo. Kindly, let's go concentrate on solutions and questions to Willis.
Thank you. Number one, let me just say this.
Yes.
That is actually what Jimmy has been calling for. That we need to now move towards holding individuals culpable, individual responsibility. On the issue of the SGR contracts, I've even gone to court on behalf of Hele Khalifa and the Muslims for Human Rights. And we got a court order compelling the state to release the SGR contracts. To date, the court gave us the order. That order has not been complied with. We even filed an application for contempt of court to hold the officials accountable in contempt for failing to disclose the contract as was ordered by the court. You know, SGR is an interesting project if you are to understand this in totality. In SGR, the contract that was signed from Nairobi, from Mombasa to Nairobi, was a contract of 450 billion. No, sorry, from Nairobi, Mombasa to Dukamoja, that is somewhere in my mind. It was 450 billion. So first Nairobi, 350 billion, they added 100 billion to the Dukamoja line. Then subsequently, the Kenya contract was paid its finance for 10% of the cost of the project. That was coming to around 45 billion Kenya shillings on finance. So once you pay your own contribution to China Road and Bridge, then you do the drawdowns. Then China Exim Bank, apparently lending the money, will be releasing money to the contractor as per the certificates. The interesting thing when we look at the figures was that, fine, the first thing, Kenya Railways released 45 billion as per the contract. Work started. China Road disbursed money. Sorry, China Exim disbursed money to China Road and Bridge as required. But then in subsequent years, Kenya Railways, instead of just paying 45 billion, kept disbursing money. And you look at the budgets of different years. Money was still being paid from Kenya Treasury to Kenya Railway and then transferred to China Road of up to 670 billion Kenya shillings. At the same time, the drawdowns were also being made from China Exim to pay for the contract, and over time, China Exim paid 450 billion. So China Exim paid 450 billion. Kenya Railways received and paid from National Treasury around 670 billion. What that means is this. China Road in the center received 670 billion from Kenya Railways. China Road received 450 billion from China Exim as a loan in the name of the people of Kenya. So they received a total of 670 billion plus 450 billion, almost 1.3 trillion. In other words, if you look at the value of the contract, which was 450 billion, the Kenyan people could have financed it with their own money. We did not have taken a loan from China Exim for that project. Now we ended up spending 1.2 trillion on a 450 billion project. Go to National Parliament. Look at the Appropriations Act from the year 2013 up to this year. Nowhere will you find in the Appropriations Act an approval by parliament for the Kenyan people to take a loan from China Exim to build SGR. But right there, you have a loan of 450 billion. Why should we pay it? In all fairness, this is a scandal of untold proportions. I think at some point, people in the executive learned that they will do this small corruption that Kenyans will be interested in, but then Kenyans don't pay attention on the big things. And that big thing is debt. Your disenfranchisement and the theft of your resources is now no longer about somebody winning a tender here to supply nets. They leak those little informations for you to show you there's corruption. But the big corruption is in the debt. I'm sure on this space, over 90% of the listeners are not even aware of how much is the total sum spent by the people of Kenya on SGR. I'm telling you, it is around 1.2 trillion plus for a contract that was only worth 450 billion, which still was exorbitant if you look at what was initially proposed. But people will start saying, oh, Jimmy is bitter because you didn't get the contract. But you've been stolen from 1.2 trillion. That is your money. It's not Jimmy's money. It's only his money to the extent that he's not a taxpayer. But it's not the 1.2 trillion coming from him as a person individually. So these are the things we must ask. As the last speaker said, all this information we are talking about is right there before you. The documents that you can look at the Appropriations Act. Look at how much Kenya Railway has been paying to this company. Look at what China Road is claiming from the people of, China Exim is claiming from the people of Kenya. It's all there. But Kenyans, I think when people see figures, people see math, we get into a mental shutdown. We don't want to do the addition and summations. Our forensic audit disclosed that. So we must go the route, in my view, that Mozambique did. And those citizens, in fact, when they went to court, their parliament, their national executive, were defending the obligation to pay that loan. And their constitutional court said, no, show us the parliamentary approval that allowed you to take this loan. And as rightfully said, the former finance minister, the head of intelligence are in jail. The son of Gebweza, the former president, is in jail as we speak because they are the ones who superintended over that tuna bond that was going to cost the people of Mozambique US dollar 2 billion as an obligation. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Guys, let's now try to really close at the top of the hour. Kenyans for Kenya, that's Wycliff. Oti, I'd called you, but you're not speaking. Wycliff, and then Tevo. Wycliff, are you able to speak? Otherwise, I'll drop you and pick another speaker. Tevo, go on, then Daniel and Nimrod, 2 minutes each.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to take briefly 2 minutes. So my my question is to Willis. Willis has talked about the PFM Act of 2012, which wasn't followed while borrowing the money. So how will we save ourselves from paying it, and what are they doing? He's a lawyer and also a public figure. So what are they doing to ensure we don't pay this odious debt? So lastly, about the solution. So the only solution is that the whole regime needs to go to protect our sovereignty, because every time it stays to power is every time Bill Gates is testing his TB vaccine. Every time this government stays to power is every time John Mbadi and government of Kenya is borrowing from IMF. Actually, the IMF tells them to increase taxes, defund education and health. This regime needs to go to protect us from punitive bills like price control bills, seed bills from IMF. And lastly, I always educate the masses about the evil of IMF, Bill Gates, so anyone can follow me. Let's liberate our country. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tevo. And that's a good point. Let's build the network by following each other. You will need to amplify messages in some weeks to come. So you want to be having a good number to do that. Daniel, 2 minutes, and Nimrod. Deborah, I see you, but allow me to give others who haven't spoken some time. And then, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marge, and thank you for holding this space. First of all, I want to remind everybody that information is power. Regardless of where it comes from, information is always power. It is good to we have information so that we can be able to know the running of our country and be able to ask questions. And we have a problem as a country. I believe we have a problem because if somebody, just an unnamed person, assume me, I went and did exactly what Jimmy Wanjigi did, and I came and presented that information to Kenyans, will they believe me? Ama will they just dismiss me and say, Daniel, we do not know you, you are a nobody, you lack credibility. Now, somebody with credibility has gone and is still a private citizen, has done his research and has brought that information to us. Some, instead of consuming that information, we are busy fighting Jimmy Wanjigi. Have you consumed that information? We need to consume this information and be very, very angry. And I'm seeing so many people focusing on the 6.3 that we did not
So guys,
require.
it's almost midnight in Kenya. Can we please focus on questions at this point, because we've already shared our opinions? So let's focus on questions so that at least even if Willis is answering them, we can, because I know he's working tomorrow, we're also all working tomorrow. So let's just focus on the questions, and then he will close by answering those questions. Back to you, Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Madge. For me, honestly, I do not have a question for Willis. Mine is just a statement. After confirming the 6.3 trillion that we did not really require, can we also inquire the 8.9 that was paid as debt? Which are these debt that was paid? The 11 trillion outstanding debt that we have as a country, when was that money borrowed? Where did that money go to? Because those those are huge chunks of money that every Kenyan needs to be aware of, and how that money was spent, and where that money, who are the beneficiaries? Because at the end of the day, Kenyans are not the beneficiaries of this money. So I applaud what Jimmy Wanjigi did. I don't have any question for Willis, and I submit the mic to another part, to another
Thanks.
speaker.
Let's have Dr. Nimrod and then Glass and Wangier ask questions.
Good evening. Thank you much for the space. I'm kind of on the road, but mine is just a quick submission because all the opinions, all the topics have been talked about. Mine is a call out to you and the rest of the guys who organizes these spaces out here. You guys, we need to formulate a way where, let's say we designate a Saturday where 6 hours, all of us, the big wigs on the spaces, we need to amplify these messages to get to the ground, because all we're doing, we all got all the information on the spaces, but it's not getting to the ground. And that's why we in diaspora, we're failing our guys at home. We're not organizing them. We're here talking too much, but we're actually not organizing the guys to ground to put a message out there that this is what's happening in the country. We can't,
Thank you. Yeah. Your network is really bad.
The topics should be recorded, and then you play them down there. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, guys.
Engineer, take the mic. You've been requesting for long. Questions to Willis. Engineer David.
Okay, thank you much for this opportunity. Mr. Willis, my first question is, how many ghost workers do we have in the government? Second question is, suppose today we are going to do a public audit for all the debts that that Kenyan government that the Kenyan government owes IMF and other authorities. Will we get the exact of the money that the government of Kenya owes from the outside world? The third question is, this one is a bit challenging, but I'll just tell you there are 3 offices in Kenya that I think we need to clean them with water and soap. The first one is always called procurement of his department. Procurement department. Both.
Engineer, may I remind you to stick to the topic of the day? Do you have another question on that?
Okay. I have another question on good governance, concerning good governance. I would like to ask Mr. Willis this question. That how many? I would like to know the exact value of money that we owe IMF and other other lending platforms that have lent Kenya.
I think we lost you there, engineer. We move to West, and I would like also to request that people ask questions that are related to the topic. And now I'm only going to add 2 more people, then we close and give Willis the last chance to close and only answer questions that are related to the topic. We have to also be really just fair and not ask questions that are really very abstract. Be specific. The topic of today is regarding the expose, so more of our debts and things like that, because otherwise it's going to be a waste of time. Weston?
Thank you, Maj, and all the listeners on this platform. Willis, before I ask you a question, first, Jimmy Wanjigi and good governance in the same sentences, and
it's me who constructed that sentence. It's not Willis. And so,
well, I'm saying it's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron.
Can you let me speak? What I'm saying is this: I'm willing to explain what's happening. Those are 2 topics, and whether you are discussing 2 topics, you can put those 2 things in between. So we're discussing the Jimmy Wanjigi expose, and also we want to call for good governance. Back to you. 2 minutes, please, for the questions.
Well, Willis, why is Jimmy Wanjigi not going to court with all this information? Why does he choose to go to a media house and to say all these things? Because the kind of information Jimmy Wanjigi is talking about, I can tell you it's only state institutions that have the capacity to unearth this kind of network, Al Capone kind of corruption you're talking about here. So when he exposes this information before Kenyans, and then people come on a platform like this, they ask questions about exactly what is the date that Kenyans owe external and internal lenders. Well, if you know about that date, what do you do? What do you do about it? But Jimmy Wanjigi, being an insider, knowing these people, having been party to some of these deals, he can go to court and he's believable because he's a witness, he's an accomplice in this heist. Why does he choose to take these matters to the court of public opinion? What would Kenyans do with this kind of information? John Allen Namu has no capacity to investigate something of this nature. In the US, individuals don't investigate this kind of matters. It's the state that does and brings those people to book. So I still insist to try and portray Jimmy Wanjigi as some kind of a paragon of good governance is tantamount to trying to turn brass into gold. Thank you.
Thanks, Weston. I'd like to reassure you that that is not what we are doing. That was why I attempted to explain to you that those are 2 different topics that are put in one title. I just want to say your question is very valid. Why is he not going to court? Wakili will answer to that. But about being an insider, I just wanted to add that I was called an insider too. Now, next is Glass, and then Doctor, and then Wakili will respond, and then we close. Glass, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Can you hear me? So far, everyone has reiterated my thought process. I just want to say to Willis, go say hi to Jimmy. I want to encourage him. I want him to go forward. I've been listening to him for a very long time now. It's a year plus. And on the issue of debt. So I want to encourage him, say, tell him that we support him. That's what I can conclude now. And second question would be just to ask everyone in their thought process: are we scared of a revolution? That's what I want to end with. Are we scared of a revolution? That's what I want to end with. Because whatever Jimmy is saying through our debt process, our through the government, through county governments, and the amount of corruption is so shocking. And time to change has come. So the question would be like, are we scared of change? Jimmy is just one person. He is connected with the politician. He's chosen to shed light to
Hey
everything
guys,
that is happening. Then what should we do with that information? That's the question now. What should we do with that
okay.
information?
Thanks, Glass.
Thank you so much.
Dr. AJ, your last question, and then Willis will close.
Thanks so much, Madge. Sorry, I have to get in because I was in a different meeting altogether. I've gotten in late, but I've still found you by God's grace still going on. Now, what I wanted to say is whatever Jimmy Wanjigi exposed is a critical thing for us as a country. He exposed a bit of it. And so it is our responsibility to ensure that we don't kill the messenger, we dissect the message, and we get into deeper understanding of the situations in terms of our debt book currently as it is. Then moving forward then, because there is a lot of misinformation outside there, some being perpetrated by the government and some bloggers, let us prepare for an election before 2027 and dissolve this parliament. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Now, guys, those who've not managed to speak, I really apologize. I'm not able to add anyone else to the panel because it's late. We'll be hosting other space, and we'll give you an opportunity to chime in. Otherwise, you can put your questions on the comment section. I'm going to ask and tag Willis tomorrow to it. Willis, thanks for joining, and over to you for closing remarks as you answer the questions.
Thank you very much. The first question was asked, how many ghost workers do you have in government? There are so many. I may not have the actual answer, but I think if you listened to the former CS Treasury, that was one of the issues that he raised, and why government has never found it necessary to do a proper audit of its HR. Your gaze as good as mine. There are people benefiting from that cherry. Second question, the speaker who asked about Jimmy Wanjigi and is trying to insinuate that Jimmy Wanjigi cannot be part of this conversation. Let me say this. Jimmy Wanjigi is a citizen like any other citizen. And if he is or has been involved in any illegal conduct or contract, nothing will have stopped the state or its agencies from prosecuting him and investigating him. Whatever Jimmy has done as a contract, and he's a Kenyan like any other Kenyan, with the Kenyan government or with other foreign governments or foreign companies, that is in the nature of business, and you can investigate, you can ask. If you find anything that is unconscionable, you should be prosecuted. But as I said, the fact that Jimmy has not been speaking about himself, a lot of space was left for people to create an image of the person that people even associate him with contracts or projects, which he was never part of at all. On the question of what has he done, why has he not gone to court? I'll bring to your attention that even as we speak, there's a petition which has been filed before the High Court of Kenya by a group of civil society groups, Kenya Bora, Tuitakayo, in which Jimmy is named as an interested party and is going to file his reply affidavit in support of that petition to bring out all this information that is shared publicly. And he has, in previous occasions, even the one that managed to quash the finance bill of 2023, it is Jimmy Wanjigi who gave Okia the angle, the information that proved that our Appropriation Act did not comply with the Constitution. There was only expenditure estimates, there was never revenue estimates. And if you ask me why was, as government for the last 13 years, excluded revenue estimates in the Appropriations Act, you're only told how much money you're going to spend, but government refused to tell you the sources of that revenue. Why it was never disclosed to you is because once you leave open the revenue estimates, they can now go all over the world to any bank, to any lender, to borrow money in your name, and then you think they're doing it to finance your expenditure in the Appropriations Act. The Court of Appeal declared that one to be unconstitutional. Jimmy's footprints are in that case, and so many other cases. But I also want to say this. Before even, just after Jimmy had issued his paid advert in 2022, Jimmy went to Parliament. There's a committee that was set up in Parliament called the Public Debt Management Committee of the National Assembly. That committee was set up purely to look at debt. That was its sole purpose, to look at debt. He went and made his presentation. Let me shock you that your own representatives were laughing. They were reacting the way some people are reacting on this platform, on what Jimmy was telling them. That's not possible. You're just an alarmist. We don't agree. Everything is in order. This country's debt portfolio is secure. We are managed. These are representatives who are meant to do the inquiry. In fact, the compromise, it was a very heated meeting. I was there. The compromise in that meeting was, if you don't believe me, please just call the treasury mandarins and call me here. Let them come with the debt register of all our debts. Let them come with all the repayments that Kenya government has made towards payment of debt finance. Bring it all here. Let them come with the Appropriations Acts for all the 13 years, it was sometimes last year. Let them come with all the approvals of Parliament that allowed for all the debts to be taken. And that committee, they promised, in fact, the vice chair of the committee, who was sitting on chair that day, is an MP from Kitui. I'm forgetting his name. He said, yes, within 2 weeks, we're having that kind of a meeting. That was last year. 1 year down the line, we've never heard from that committee. They've never invited us. They ignored it. But the last I heard of them was sometimes last month, and anybody can even search on the internet, when some officials from the Ministry of Health appeared before the committee. And they asked the officials about a debt of 12 billion Kenya shillings. And the Ministry of Health said, we are not aware of that debt. We didn't even know our ministry had taken a debt of 12 billion. So that is strange to us. It's exactly what you people are looking at. Now, the committee that was ignoring us, almost in a way, they almost insulted Jimmy for being mad for raising this issue. Now they were confronted with a real life issue of the Ministry of Health saying, they're asking the Ministry of Health, tell us what this debt that you took, what was it used for? The Ministry of Health said, we don't know that debt. We've never taken it. 12 billion Kenya shillings. What can 12 billion do to the people of this country? That was just one incident, a small one. The theft that has been done in this country without the people of Kenya knowing it is up to almost 5.4 trillion Kenya shillings. And yet, in your debt books, you still owe people 11 trillion Kenya shillings. But in the same period, you've paid debt of almost 5.5 trillion Kenya shillings. But your debt book is still reading 11 trillion Kenya shillings. So we should avoid this thing of trying to suppress the real issue in this country by creating innuendos, peradventures, and I invite anybody who has anything on Jimmy Wanjigi, just present the evidence as he has presented his audit report. Tell us, here is Jimmy Wanjigi. This is what he has done. Put it on the table. This is the contract that he signed. This is the project that he did. This is the money that they stole. And he will answer to it. Just like any Kenyan who has done business with governments, he has bid, he's won his tenders, he's done the projects when he was still a businessman. I accept he's now a politician. And he told Uhuru and Ruto back in 2014, me and government business, we are done. I'm not doing any project with any government. Let other people do it. Me, I'm focused on good governance. When they disagreed on how the SGR project was supposed to be financed and to be carried out, they thought it should be government. He felt it should be a private sector driven venture. So even the second last speaker who spoke, when you say Jimmy Wanjigi and Suji what can be put on the same page, I mean, it's your right. But just bring the evidence to show what you're claiming Jimmy has done. Demonstrate, like he has demonstrated on a forensic audit of the debt, what the Kenya government has done. And the Kenyan people are very bright. They are being empowered through this process. This empowerment, once we're done with this phase, they will be able to pick the wheat from the chaff. They will tell what is truthful and what is wrong. And my last word is this. All the information that Jimmy has ever spoken about on our debt situation is readily available in public records. Some of them, most of them actually, are readily available. What you may not have readily available will be the actual register of all the debts and the actual payments and the sums of all the debts paid. But you will get the summations, totals that was paid towards debt finance. You may not get, not publicly available, who exactly was paid and how much, but you'll get the summation of debt finance was this much. Publicly available and liberally shared to the people of Kenya. In fact, every month, the National Treasury, I think it's always around the second week of the month, they issue the estimates, actuals of revenue and expenditure. Actuals, not estimates now. Actuals of revenue and expenditure. You will see all that information. Parliament publishes the Appropriation Act. It's even on Kenya Law Reports website. You can get it. Do the math in all of these things. You will all become little Jimmy Wanjigis with your own exposures, because I believe most Kenyans are able to calculate. You will tell the story in your own words. You may even find better language to communicate it than Jimmy is doing when he's communicating it in English. The only thing you have to do is to do the math. The information, the bulk of it, you will find on the internet. Thank you very much, and all our listeners. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much, Willis, for taking the time. And thanks, everyone, for chiming in as speakers and as listeners as we close. Mine is very brief. I would like to remind us to bring these information to the grassroots level. They're not able, some of them, or most of them are not able to access the internet. So it really does not make a lot of sense if we are discussing it and we're clear. It's like we're going to be speaking in a silo. So let's not do that. Let's ensure the message goes to the ground. As I earlier said, the government at the moment is actually buying influence using the taxpayers' money by Kindiki coming in to want to pay the village elders money. That's where the power is, in the village. Let's go to the villages also and share the information at the grassroots level, and let's keep getting informed. That having been said, as you know, I always host spaces on diaspora opportunities, but also as an epidemiologist, I have health at the heart of my heart. And so on Saturday, we have made an exception and invited medical doctors to come and discuss the monkeypox issue. Some of you do not believe it, and that is the point whereby I say it's on a take and leave basis. You want to leave, fine, so long as you've gotten that information. So we are getting on board medical doctors from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania to come on board. That's going to happen on Saturday. I'll share the link with you. But next week, we're going to bring on board a diasporan who's written a book about the life in Europe. And so he's going to share with you about that. So do keep connected with us as we do share. Obviously, my specialty, as you know, is diaspora opportunities. But we cannot sit back and watch when there's bad governance and the Kenya is literally burning and do nothing. That's why we got in here and get involved. Currently, we are being reminded to go and take seriously the dual citizenship that Germany allowed again for Kenya. But Kenyans are not excited because of the things that are going on there. But for that, there's also going to be a session by the ambassador to tell people how the citizenship can be reclaimed back. But we are telling the president, if he's listening, or his people are listening, I know they are, the Kenya Kwanza guys in the US always have to log on to here. When we will go to that session to listen to the information, and we want to respect our ambassador because she is working, but we want to ask you, the president, why should the diasporans take back the Kenyan citizenship when they can be abducted and you do not get out there and call condemn adoption. So those are things that we need to discuss. Of course, we've passed those information. What I'm saying is this: we cannot just sit pretty in diaspora and do nothing. There has to be good governance back home so that we're able to also invest back home and do things back home. Have your progenies send money. You don't even need to take loans. If the government was really organized, the diasporans are going to bring the money home. We cannot bring the money at the moment because of the corruption down there. Yeah, so I do not want to sound like I'm ranting. I thank everyone. If you're in North and South America, good morning to you. Good evening to everyone who's on the other side. And, thanks again. Bye-bye and God bless you.